Hey y'all, it's Jacqueline at Pixie Dust PhD. I recently returned from my spring 2025 trip to the Disneyland resort. For that trip, we took a couple of days for just my partner and myself, and then my family came down. So that's my older sibling, their partner, and their 3 children ages 2, 4, and 7. My partner and I have done one other group trip to Disney, but it was with our 2 adult friends, frankly one of my best friends, and we planned to spend a lot of time apart. Yes, we shared a room. Yes, we sometimes shared transit, and we met up for meals, and we met up for some stuff, but it was kind of more just we were both on our own vacations that we happened to share rather than a shared trip. So this was really my first shared Disney trip. It's the first time I've ever traveled with my siblings' family. It's the first time I've traveled with those kids. I've been with those kids, but in their home setting. So in this video, we're going to do some reflections on expectations versus reality. It just doesn't always work out the way you think it will, and some lessons learned. For me especially, the reflection is super important for what will be my next family trip, where I again plan to host my family at Disneyland. The first category here is the parade, and so I expected that there would be a parade. I didn't know what it would be, of course. I knew it wasn't going to be the beautiful fancy one for the 70th, but I thought that there would be something. And obviously I could confirm this leading into the trip via the daily hours calendar, but there really just was no parade. So yeah, by the time we were on vacation, I knew that there wouldn't be a parade, but yeah, that was a big mismatch for me in terms of expectations and reality. And then there did end up being a cavalcade, which was just difficult to find timing-wise. I was checking daily hours calendar leading into my trip pretty regularly, and for a little bit the cavalcade was listed, and then it went away, so I thought that meant there would not even be a cavalcade. But then one day when we were in Disneyland, I just heard the music and I knew that something was happening, and it ended up being that they did have a cavalcade twice a day. But because it's not a ride, it doesn't just show up on the main screen of the app. You have to go into entertainment or something else and click on the route to know when it is. So it's just kind of hard to know when the cavalcade was happening. Literally, I didn't even know that the cavalcade was happening, so I'm glad that that was something. But in terms of expectations, reality, definitely a difference. Next up is the hotel. I booked a 2-bedroom lock-off villa at the Disneyland Hotel using my Disney Vacation Club points. So all 7 of us were staying there. The room wasn't fully ready until after 4 p.m., which apparently aligns with the official rules. So here you can say that villas will be available after 4 p.m. In my experience, I usually get them between about noon and 2 p.m., but also just generally, I guess outside of Disney, I'm used to hotel rooms being guaranteed by 4. The verbiage that they're using here for the Disneyland Resort hotels makes it pretty clear that it's after, so I think that means kind of any time after. And in investigating this further, it's actually the same for Disney World. Here's a screenshot from a different FAQ page that I pulled from the Disney World FAQs about check-in and check-out for DVC, and yeah, it says after 4 p.m. That just hasn't been my experience at Disney World, and I certainly wasn't expecting that at Disneyland, so that one's fully on me. And I will say one of the lovely viewers did warn me about, specifically when we were staying at Grand Californian, that I might not get my room until 6 p.m. or something. Interestingly, we did get our room for Grand Californian around 1:30, I think, early afternoon, pretty much what I'm accustomed to. But that just didn't happen at the Disneyland Hotel. Which for myself and my partner wasn't the biggest deal. I mean, we were a little bored, I guess, because we weren't going to the parks that day, so we were kind of just wandering around the hotel resort, waiting for our room. But my family got up super early to fly down that day. They did go to the parks that day. Again, they're small kids, so I think they were counting on having the hotel room in that mid-afternoon time range to get naps in. So lessons learned for next time. And as I mentioned, all 7 of us did share that 2-bedroom lock-off villa. In terms of expectations, I knew that the kids were going to go to sleep earlier than I would. I knew that they would be taking naps. None of that was a surprise. All of that was true. What I did not know was testing out the sleeping arrangement was funny, and this didn't really impact me by any means, but I guess if you've not traveled with your family with small children, maybe this will happen to you too. So my partner and I were in one room, and then in the living room area, there is a pull-down queen and a single sleeper. So the first night we put all 3 kids there. And then my sibling and their partner were in their own room. And that just didn't work. The youngest kid was fussing a lot at night, which I'm told is not normal at all. So then the next night they worked on their sleeping arrangement until everybody was happy. And what that ended up being was all 3 kids and their mom in one room, and then my sibling on the pull down queen. And, Adam and I still got to sleep in our own bed. And the third night we were together, they maintained that arrangement, but my partner and I were waking up super early to head to the airport, so their mom came out to say goodbye to us, and the kids were immediately fussing again, and my sibling was very much you can't leave them unattended. It was mildly entertaining for me, but definitely an eye-opener. So yeah, maybe next time we'll get separate rooms. It's something my partner and I are definitely talking about. Points-wise, I think it depends on what season you travel. Usually, if you book a 1-bedroom and a studio, that'll be either exactly the same amount of points or just a couple points different per night than booking a 2-bedroom. So the points is not really the issue. It's more just it is nice to kind of be able to be all together. I know it's something that definitely the oldest kid was super excited that we would be all staying in the same room. And very selfishly, if I booked a 1-bedroom and a studio separately, my partner and I are in the studio, and then my family, there are 5, are in the 1-bedroom. And that means that I don't get the beautiful dining room and the big tub and like all of the extra cool amenities. And again, selfishly, I like having those spaces. Especially at the Disneyland hotel, if we don't book the, I think, garden view studio, then we wouldn't get a balcony. And while I don't spend a ton of time on the balcony, again, I do really enjoy having it. So I don't know, we've got some time to make these decisions, but it's definitely something we're considering. Next up is early entry. So as on-site resort guests, we did get a half-hour early entry into one theme park per day. I figured that this would be a huge advantage. And the first day that my partner and I were there, we really did properly rope drop this. So early entry was at 7:30. We were in the park and like corralled and ready to go at 7:15, and it was great. My family didn't use it a single time. I figured like the kids are normally up between 6 and 6:30 anyway. Early entry is at 7:30. Day guests are let in at 8. Like even if they couldn't proper rope drop early entry, I thought they for sure would beat the day guests, and they just couldn't make it happen. The kids were up, but I don't know, with like dressing and getting everyone going, and it is a little bit of a walk from the Disneyland hotel into the parks. Like, I don't know, just couldn't make it happen. So that was a bummer for me in terms of like, I think they probably could have gotten more done and had maybe a more enjoyable experience with less time in lines if they had actually properly rope dropped. But of course, I understand that like the kids need to sleep. And here's the biggest disconnect for me between expectations and reality, and it really had to do with planning. So as a little bit of background, if you're new around here, I am very type A. I'm a big planner. Not that I plan out every minute of our Disney days, but I do my research so I know how I'm going to attack the day as the day unfolds. My siblings, much more lackadaisical, like type B, go with the flow, chill. So I'm not that surprised that they didn't do much planning, but the extent of it I found surprising. And also I would try to prompt them a little bit to either plan themselves or let me help them more, and it just wasn't happening. So for example, I asked my sibling, like, what time do the kids normally eat lunch? What time do they normally take a nap? That way we could try to plan our days around those. And my sibling's response was very much like, whatever happens, it'll be fine. I'm like, no, I'm trying to make it magical, not just fine. But anyway, I won't try to spend too long on this slide because I don't want it to come off as just complaining about my family. But basically, there were a lot of small things that I think we could have tackled in advance to make the trip better. So they didn't know how tall the 2-year-old was. So right from the get-go, we didn't know what rides that everybody could do other than rides without a height requirement. The day my family arrived, my partner and I didn't go into the theme parks, but they went to Disneyland, and they didn't try any of the like big kid rides. So the bigger kid didn't go on Big Thunder Mountain or the Matterhorn or anything like that. Then the first day we were all together, which was the second theme park day for them, we went to DCA, and the biggest kid wanted to go on Incredicoasters so badly. Like, she brought it up all the time, which is cute and fun, but I'm sitting there with her mom like, what's the scariest ride she's done? And it's like Star Tours or like a fair ride back at home. And I'm like, I don't know. You know, if we put her on the Incredicoaster and she hates it and she's terrified, that's going to ruin the whole day and maybe even the whole trip. So we just dodged that. I mean, she kept asking and we just didn't do it. She just didn't go on the Incredicoaster. But then the next day when she did go on Big Thunder and liked it, and then Matterhorn and liked it, and Space Mountain and liked it, like, I think she could have handled the Incredicoaster. It just wasn't a risk I was willing to take, and Mom agreed with me. But like, if they had done their first Disneyland day a little differently, probably could have tackled the Incredicoaster. Building on that, my family also didn't buy park hoppers, which is something I didn't know. They had 3-day tickets, and so I think once you're past 2 days, I would generally recommend park hoppers. Again, because the way that worked out was 1 day at Disneyland, 1 day at DCA, 1 day at Disneyland for them, which meant anything that didn't happen at DCA that one day, they couldn't come back to. So we didn't end up getting on Web Slingers because it was pretty unreliable that day. It was down for a lot of the morning, and then by the time we finally got in line, it also went down again. We got dumped from the queue. Day was kind of ending. Like, we just didn't get on it, and the 4-year-old loved Spider-Man, and the next day was being super cute, but like, do you think the Spider-Man ride's back up? You know, like, and like, yeah, it is, kid, but we can't go there because your parents didn't buy park hoppers. Or same with this Incredicoaster debacle. Like, I really, truly think, especially at Disneyland, because the parks are so close together, that if you're going to be there for more than 2 days, the park hoppers are worth it. Building on this even more, they weren't super aware of character cutoff time. So yes, Disneyland characters and Walt Disney World characters are a pretty different vibe. But there still are some set character meet and greets at Disneyland that do end at like 4 or 5 p.m. Which for the kids means if they get up, go to the parks, eat lunch, take a nap, are you going to make it back into the park before that cutoff? And again, at DCA for Elsa and Anna, the answer was no. So they weren't really aware of the cutoff time, and then because there was no park hopper, we couldn't go back and do it the next day. Blah, blah, blah. You're seeing a theme. They didn't really know the park hours, which isn't necessarily something you have to have memorized. But for example, the first day they went in the parks was a Sunday, and it was still like spring break according to Disney. So Disneyland was open till midnight. But that Monday they were off spring break hours. So then Disneyland closed at 10 p.m. And not that they were going to keep the kids out late, but they just didn't seem to grasp that like the hours were different now. Luckily, opening time was the same throughout, so we didn't have to worry about that changing. They definitely hadn't like perused the apps in the afternoon or whatever to see what rides would garner high wait times. For example, in our DCA morning, the kids wanted to do Jesse's Critter Carousel, and I pretty hard said, like, can we come back and do that later, because Toy Story Midway Mania is only a 10-minute wait right now, and it won't be soon. And luckily, again, parents agreed with me, and we did Toy Story Mania, and then we got off, and then we did Jesse's Critter Carousel. By the time we got off the carousel, Toy Story Mania was like a 50-minute wait. But yeah, they just didn't seem to know how to prioritize based on like, what do you really want to spend your precious morning time on? And going along with that, there was the notion that they thought Monday and Tuesday wouldn't be very busy, even though it was their spring break. It was not Southern California spring break, but it was their spring break. You know, it was the end of March, early April. Like, people are definitely off during that time. That is not low season to go to Disneyland. So that was, yeah, they were not braced for crowds. And unsurprisingly, based on what I've already told you, they definitely didn't have a priority list of like, these are our tier A things. These are the 4 or 5 things that we have to get done on any given day. It was way more kind of just like, let's walk around and get in lines that seem reasonable, or like check the app and move over to lines that seem reasonable. So for example, like in my opinion, Web Slinger should have been a priority A ride, because the 4-year-old loves Spider-Man. And it's not that they were ignoring it all day, but they just didn't really make it a priority. I found that confusing and something that we should avoid next time. And something that's really not a problem, but definitely didn't match my like expectation to reality, was that the adults didn't really peel off. So occasionally we would split the group, where like the bigger kid would go with one parent, and either both myself and my partner, or one of us or whatever, to go do a big kid ride. And then, you know, another parent would take the 2 smaller kids, or the one parent would take the smallest kid and one parent would take the 2 older kids, whatever. Like, they split the family up. But it was never just all 3 kids are going to stay with 3 adults and do something, and one adult will peel off and go single ride or something. And my partner and I had been there in the days prior, so we had, you know, pretty much gotten to do what we wanted to. But I did kind of keep raising this to the other adults in our party who were with their children, like, hey, if one of you wants to go do single rider from Millennium Falcon, it'll probably only take 20 minutes. Or if one of you wants to go do single rider at the Cars ride, like, it'll probably take 30 minutes. But, like, there's 3 of us here, still 3 adults, and still one of their parents, like, it's fine. And they just didn't do it. And that's totally their choice. But I really thought that they would have taken advantage of that more. Like, I think that's some of the perk of having extra adults around when you're doing a family vacation, is it makes it easier for the parents to like, go do one thing for yourself. But yeah, overall, I felt like both the parents themselves and then them to their kids, like, definitely didn't really prep for the reality of like, there will be lines, you will be bored, weather might not be perfect, every food place we stop at won't have everything you want. You know, we would stop at one place for lunch and one kid would want pizza and that place doesn't have pizza, like, sorry. So yeah, overall just felt like obviously very little planning, which I understand, but also super little preparation, which I think I will try to nip in the bud next time. Next, let's talk about dining, which largely was very good. That is what you hear about Disneyland, and that is still my experience. I will say, though, there were 2 venues where I ordered alcoholic drinks that are shaken and served up, and they did have ice chips, meaning that it wasn't double strained, which I just think if you're charging $20 a cocktail is so lazy and unacceptable. That was like a big miss for me in terms of my expectations to reality. And once we were with the kids, it became more apparent how few places have really indoor seating for quick service dining. There are a few options, but a lot of stuff is fully outdoors or like semi-outdoors, like maybe it's covered but still outside. And it was breezier when we were there, so the kids were just cold and I felt kind of bad. Versus in Florida, because of the nasty heat, you know, there's a lot of inside options. Although honestly, Florida could probably use more inside options too. And this last bullet I think I did know, but I just wanted to reiterate in case anybody cares, that raspberry rose macaron that's super popular from Jolly Holiday does sell out. So if you want one, you really should mobile order one to secure your macaron. Like I mentioned before, this was my first Disneyland trip with kids. For me, Disney is very much a shared experience, and so your shared experience then is dramatically impacted by who you're with. And obviously kids are kids, their brains are not fully developed, who knows what they're thinking about, sometimes concepts aren't even fully developed, and they're kind of unfiltered, so I knew that there would be a lot of complaints, but I was hoping it would be like 70-30 complaints to magic, and it honestly felt like 90-10 most of the time. There were very few times where you would get off an attraction or whatever and be like, how was that? And the answer wasn't just like a complaint. So I got better at asking questions in terms of like, did you like this part? And then, yeah, but it just didn't feel as magical as I wanted it to. At the end of the trip, though, their mom did make a point to come tell me, like, the kids had such a good time. They'll remember this. Like, I know that they complained a lot, but these were the best days ever. So I know that they enjoyed it, but it is just a bummer, like, in the moment when you're there and it's mostly just complaints. Something I really missed the mark on my expectations was how long it would take to eat. So I knew that the table service meals with the kids would be pretty slow, but even quick service was like an hour. Like, there is no fast eating with kids these age, apparently. And you can't like walk and eat. You're really like, even if you're doing quick service, you gotta budget time for eating. Something I wasn't sure about going into this trip was the age range. So like I said, there was a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 7-year-old. And those are pretty different when it comes to experiencing like theme park attractions. And yeah, it did play out that way where like 2-year-old couldn't go on a lot of stuff that 4 and 7-year-old could go on. 7-year-old could go on a few things that 4-year-old couldn't go on. And just like their understanding and processing and enjoyment of the attractions was pretty different. So I think with that range was a little bit hard to kind of keep everybody happy. I did also kind of think that the 7-year-old would be the easiest to please because she's like the most full human at this point. And loves princesses and like understands what's happening, can follow directions, all those things. And I think she had a good time, but she complained the most out of everybody. Versus it felt like in the moments, the 4-year-old had the best time. Like if you asked him kind of, did you like that? Or what was your favorite part? He complained less frequently. But yeah, I'll be interested to see how the dynamic evolves as they all age. Obviously, the range will always be the same. Like, they'll always be a few years apart between the 3 of them. But once they're, like, all tall enough to do everything, is that going to melt away some of the friction and complaints and such? Something I really did not anticipate was how big of a distraction the existence of Lightning Lane Multipass would be. So the 7-year-old is smart enough to understand that it exists. She saw the other line. She gets it. Which meant that every time we were staying in a line, she'd be like, why can't we just buy the thing so we can skip this line? Which I understand, but like, oh, kiddo. Like, and also it's funny how kids grasp like most of the situation, but not all of it. So for example, we would be in a line for a ride that does not have Lightning Lane. And she would ask if we could just buy Lightning Lane. And I would tell her, literally, there is no Lightning Lane for this. And she would disagree. Like, kids just kind of make up their own facts to an extent. Or like, I don't know if that's their imagination or the way they process things. I'm not a child psychologist, but yeah, she had a lot of strong opinions. And Lightning Lane Multipass was rough because yeah, once she knew that existed, it was like, oh, we were toast about her waiting in lines. I mean, she did wait, but it was raised frequently. So for some overall big lessons learned, I know we've touched on some of these throughout the video, but definitely super glad that my partner and I took some adult-only time before my family arrived. I would also be happy to do it after. I think the point just being that, like, if we're going to host my family at Disneyland, we need to make sure that we have some us-only time to get the things that we want to get done. Like I mentioned before, I'm not too sure what the room arrangement will be moving forward. We did have a single shared 2-bedroom this time. Maybe we split up. We'll see. If you have any thoughts or advice about that, I would really love to hear it, honestly. I really don't have experience with this, so I feel pretty in no man's land. And I'm not really sure what all I should be considering. Next time, I'm definitely going to make a concerted effort to just plan with my sibling's partner. Like I mentioned, I did email my sibling a bunch of times with like questions. I sent the rough itinerary. I found out literally like the last night of our trip that my sibling like didn't even send the itinerary to their partner. And so I don't think that their partner is as type A as I am, but I think that they'll be a much more willing participant in the planning phase. And maybe then if we're in better communication beforehand, I can help them prepare better. Everything will go more smoothly. Including, I definitely want to push them next time for the current heights of the kids so we can know what rides they can and cannot go on beforehand. I really want them to make like a must-do list. Like, what are everybody pick one thing. What are the must-do things you have to get done this trip? And if we're going to be there for 3 days or longer again, I might really try to insist on park hoppers. I truly think those would benefit their experience so much to be a little bit more flexible if rides go down or if nap time takes precedence over character greets or whatever it is. And yeah, overall, when I travel to theme parks, my general expectation is I hope to get one thing an hour done. So that thing can be a ride, it can be a show, it can be eating, but I just want to try to tick off one thing an hour. With the kids, I need to reduce that number for sure. I don't know if it's one thing every 2 hours, that maybe feels a little too slow. We definitely need to exclude nap time from that, so just like active time in the parks, maybe one thing every hour and a half, but everything just does take longer. There's a lot more conversation and bargaining about what we're going to do, and then you have to park the stroller, and then you have to get there, and then you do the thing. If it's eating, it just takes longer. Obviously, walking everywhere takes longer. So yeah, I just need to adjust down what I hope to get done. when I go by myself or with my partner, when I go with adults, we almost always beat one thing an hour, like pretty easily. But that's where I like to level set my expectations to make sure that I'm having a good day. So I need to level set a little bit differently moving forward. I would love to hear your advice, tips, lessons learned, anything like that for traveling to Disney parks with kids, especially if you're in this position where, like, I'm the aunt. I'm not the parent, you know, I don't have full say, full control, full influence. Obviously, from you being pre-parents before you had kids to parents, I'm sure is an interesting transition. I would love to hear about that too. But I think being the friend or the aunt or whatever, you know, the secondary set of adults poses its own set of interesting challenges. Of course, I'm also relieved of many duties as a secondary adult. Like, I don't really have to deal with nap time, so pros and cons for sure. Definitely looking forward to hearing from you, though, and incorporating that into my planning for my next trip with my family. That's probably a couple to few years off, but we'll see. I have to recoup my DVC points. If you found this helpful, informative, or entertaining at all, please do remember to like the video. You can also subscribe to the channel and then ring the bell icon to receive a notification whenever I upload new videos. All these little free actions really help out in the eyes of the YouTube algorithm, so I super appreciate your support, and big extra thanks to all of my monthly supporters over on my Ko-fi. I will leave a link in the description below if you're interested in becoming a monthly member. If you're planning a family trip to a Disney theme park, I wish you luck, and I hope whoever you're planning with is a little bit more communicative than my sibling is with me. May the rest of your day be magical, and we'll see you real soon at Pixie Dust PhD.